Hello, my name is Laura, and you're watching the Beanbird 2 channel, where we talk about testimonies and the goodness of God. And today's video is going to be special to me, and it'll be a little bit different. I want to give a backstory about a piece of land that meant a lot to me when I was a kid, and kind of as I tell the story, the revelation that God gave me during my walk today. And I want to start with, I've shared with you that I had a difficult childhood, but one of the bright things that happened when I was a kid was every summer for 2 weeks, we would go to Grayling, Michigan, which is up north, and we would stay there for 2 weeks with my grandma. She had a house on the Ausable River, and there was a beautiful waterfront property. And initially, when I was a little kid, I would go with my mom for a week. But when I got older, I was allowed to go by myself for 2 weeks. And those days were something I treasured so much. And even now, I think about the days on that river and in that land as I think about it every day. And I know that sounds excessive, but anytime I see water or trees or a beautiful sky, it takes me right back to those days. And so first I want to line out why it was so special to me. My life at home was chaotic. And we lived in downriver Detroit, and the air was polluted. And when we went up to Grayling, there was this shift in the air. It was crisp, it was clean. You would inhale and you would just breathe in the cedars, trees, and the pines, and there was a special smell that went with that up north clean air. And the river was clear. You could look in the water and see the trout and the rainbow fish. You could hear the blue jays screeching. If you looked in the sky, you'd see eagles flying. My grandpa would feed the orioles, and so we could watch the orioles from inside the house. They were hummingbird feeders. They had deer. It was gorgeous. And my grandparents' house was beautiful. It was very unique, and it was nestled in the woods to where it kind of fit into the natural landscape of the area, and it had a unique architecture to it. And there was crushed stone paths that went through the woods, and there was a well that my grandpa had dug out, and that well he turned into a pump so that it fed into a creek. And there was a creek path that they had made that went from part of the property all the way down to the Ausable River. And I remember so many times I would walk down that crushed stone path, and I would follow the river and cross the little footbridges that they had built. And I would pray and spend time with the Lord there. I spent so much time worshiping God on the dock, looking at the water, singing to the Lord in the woods. It was such a precious time of spiritual growth to me, and it made me feel close to the Lord to be there, to be nestled in that nature. I felt safe. I felt the beauty of the Lord just around me everywhere. And I treasured it so much. You know, it was so special to me. And it was a place where I looked forward to every year, especially meeting the Lord there. I mean, we can interact with the Lord wherever we are, but something felt special about being in that place. It was like the figurative mountaintop of prayer for me. And I've always just thought about it. And what happened was in 2009, my grandparents had both passed on, and my mom had sold the house, and she didn't tell me that it was for sale until it was already sold. And I remember being devastated that she sold the property because it was so unique and so special. But this also coincided with the time of my husband and I going through our short sale of our house, so we couldn't have afforded to buy it anyway. But I was never offered even an opportunity to really say goodbye to the house or take anything from the house. She sold everything in an estate sale, and it was just gone. But I was a new mom, and life was busy then, and I tried to just not think about it too much. But I would always kind of have that image in my mind of that was like my ideal of like beauty, was that environment. Well, lately I haven't been able to get the Ausable River out of my mind, and you can Google pictures of it, or maybe even there's some kayak videos on YouTube of people kayaking the Ausable, and kind of get an idea of the beauty that is up there. It's truly amazing. The stretch of water that my grandma lived on was called Holy Water, and the reason why it was named that was because that stretch of the river was said to be especially beautiful with the cedars and the white pines. And it was just a little treasured section of river that they named that. So lately, this has been on my mind a lot lately, and I felt like the Lord just kept maybe bringing it up in my mind over and over again. And so I started to look into it, and I did a Zillow search and looked it up on realtor.com and tried to see like who owns the house, not the name of who owns it, but like how many times has it been sold, or like maybe there's modern pictures of the house and what it looked like, to see like how maybe it's changed or maybe it's the same. And this was just yesterday. I was devastated because when I looked up the land, I saw that, I can't believe I'm getting emotional about this, but they divided the land. It was 1.25 acres, and it was divided into half-acre lots, and the land was divided. And originally when I was looking at it, I was like, wait, this doesn't make sense. This is where my grandma's house was, but the housing is different, and then the address was different. So I guess when they divided up the lots, the address changed. So the house that used to have all these beautiful creeks and crushed stone quartz paths and a little pond, all this stuff was demolished, and the house was gone, and the flower beds were removed, and what was left was a new construction building. And at first I thought, this can't be the house, right? This can't be the same one. Even my husband, he looked at it and he goes, that can't be the same place. And I'm like, no, this is the land. And I recognized the driveway, but the driveway went to divided parcels and housing that I didn't recognize at all. But when I started looking at the pictures that they had of the interior of the home, I was surprised to see pieces of my grandma's house in the new construction. The kitchen cabinets were the same, the windows were the same, and my grandma's house had this special hexagon window that was a specialty window, and that was in the bathroom, and it was in the stairwell of the new house, and I knew that was the window, and I'm like, no, this is the place. This is my grandma's window. This is the cabinets. Like all of those things, like the wood paneling, was in this new construction home. But it wasn't done in a good way. It was like they tore down what I thought was a great house, and they built something cheap, and then threw little pieces of my grandma's house, like the window, into this cheap construction home. And I can't exactly explain why, but I felt really like upset about that. I don't know, I felt more upset that they had reused those pieces than if they had not. And I kept thinking that doesn't make any sense. I should feel honored that there's a piece of the house in this new house. But instead I just felt like it doesn't belong there. Like this beautiful thing was put into this ugly thing. And all the flower beds were bulldozed and turned into grass seed. And the trees were torn down and replaced with a rental unit. And I was just really upset about this. My husband's like, I wish you would have never learned this. It would have been better if you just remembered it the way that it was. So just thinking about it, I started to cry a little bit. And then I thought, why is this upsetting me so much? It's just a house, it's just a piece of land. I mean, I can worship God anywhere. There's nothing special necessarily about that land. I can worship God here, and I do worship God where I am. But so I thought, I need to pray about this. It's obviously bothering me, so let's take it to the Lord, right? So I'm walking and praying over this, and I'm asking God, I'm like, God, it's just the land. And somebody had said, well, maybe it's, your memories with your grandma and grandpa. And it's like, no, it really wasn't about my grandparents or memories of my grandparents. It really was about the land. Like, I felt a connection to the land, and I was upset that it was bulldozed and the creeks were removed and it was just replaced by grass seed, and I don't know. So I was praying about it, and I'm like, Lord, I just can't wrap my head around why this hurts so much. Like, it created pain in my heart, like I can't hardly explain. So anyway, I felt like after a long time praying, the Lord said something to me, I believe, and he was speaking to me that how it hurt my heart that they divided that land, and how they had torn down something beautiful and put up something temporary, something that wasn't nearly as architecturally beautiful. And that I think about how the people want to divide his land, right? God's land in Jerusalem, Israel, people going after God's land. And in the way that I feel in my heart about this piece of land in Grayling, how much more the Lord feels that for his land and for his people. And I think about how, if you could see a piece of land and watch it over time, you'd see it change, right? If it was like before the United States was a country, it would have all just been woods. And then slowly, you get a road, and then you get a little cabin, and then that wood cabin turns into a more permanent house. And then how over time you see land change. And I think about Israel and how that used to be the promised land, right? Land flowing with milk and honey. And how that land physically has changed all the way from before Christ's time, all the way up until present time, right? And you see the changes in the land, structures that are different, terrain, waterways that changed. Israel used to be kind of more barren, and then now they grow all sorts of fruits and vegetables there. They found ways to use the water and turn salt water into fresh water. And if you had perspective to be able to see centuries of how that land changed over time, I was thinking about how God sees the land and the earth, and that there are pieces of land that we know are special to the Lord, that God says belongs to the Lord. And we know that not all land is the same to him, okay? And then what I was thinking about is, I felt like God asked me this question of, well, what would you do about it? My grandma's house, And I thought, well, if I could do anything, I would buy the land and I would restore it. I would reunite those parcels, and I would make it from being divided, and I would make it one. And then I would put the creeks back in, and I would plant the trees. And I felt like he was saying that's what I'm going to do. And we know that God is going to make a new Jerusalem, and the millennial reign is coming. And I think about God, who makes all things new, and he restores things that are desecrated. And I'm sorry, I just want to get this message out. God restores what's desecrated, and he makes all things new. And he's going to do that with the world as a whole, Jerusalem. He's going to restore his people. I thought about how I thought I would buy the land, and the Lord has bought the land, and he has bought us. He's invested in us through his death on the cross. He has purchased us, and he purchases us so that he can restore us. And God is a restorer, and he's good. And that's the message, Satan tries to destroy and take away, And God, He will fix it. He will make it new, and He will make you new, and He will heal your hurts. He'll restore your family. He'll restore your land. He'll restore His people. And we just eagerly await that day when Jesus is King of this world. He's King in our hearts, and He rules over Jerusalem again, a new Jerusalem. And that's what I'm thinking about today. So, oh, kind of sad, but I hope that it helps you today. And hey, if it's meaningful, then it's all worth it, right? So, yeah, thank you, and talk to you tomorrow.